Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare.
We'll move into a question and answer with the audience. I'd like people to pose a question. I'll come around with a microphone. Please say who you're directing your question to, and if the panelists can keep their answers, under 2 minutes, so just short and sweet. Then we can get through a number of questions. Just to follow up on, one of the objectives of this is, to think about ourselves, ways that we can combine and network. One of the tools that I think we should all look at using is a networking tool. It's called LinkedIn. It's a free tool at www.linkedin.com. And it's a very easy way for professionals to network. And I think this is one sort of area that we need to improve on. And the other one is, as Kulimela was saying, is mentoring, and how we can create a mentor system whereby people who want to start a business, how can they talk to people who already are in business and can give advice and consultation and direct them. So for me, these are two ideas that I have about how we can take something forward from this. And I'd definitely like to hear following on from this in the weeks, months, and so on, to get feedback on this and think about how we can take that forward. So anyway, on to the questions. Does anybody have a question? I see Nandu first, please.
I got a question. Okay, I'm at a level right now where, say I have a multi-million-dollar idea. Okay?
Listen.
Now what do I do?
Who's your question? Who's your question to?
To senior most. Hare Krishna.
And what's the question? What's the idea?
Okay, that's great. Thank you for asking.
Are you going to sign a non-disclosure agreement?
I'm just sitting right next to the ISKCON chairman for crop protection, right? And this Peruvian has worked so hard all his life trying to promote crop protection all over ISKCON, all over the world, and it's just, everybody loves the idea, but nobody wants to finance it. And here there's a chance where the idea is karma-free dairy. And we have so many people on goshalas all over ISKCON that are just sitting there, people are feeding the cows, and there's nothing really coming out of it. Devotees are not being hired, community meetings. The first thing the community, as far as I'm concerned, is good finance. All this free service coming through, and people get tired of doing free service, and then they move on to where they can get paid. So here's an idea for karma-free dairy, which means there is a huge market in America, which is for organic dairy, right?
I think if we keep to your main question, which I think is, if you have an idea, which is a good business idea, and you're trying to understand how can you finance it and make it happen, and what are the steps that you need to make it happen. So we're actually going to have a session afterwards with me, Kapila, and a couple of others where we can, we'll sit down with individuals and they can explain actually their ideas and steps to do that, because that's more detailed. But am I right that your question is that what do you need in order to get this idea off the ground, or who do you see and how do you make it happen?
Yeah, it's an idea that he liked very much, and now I'm just saying,
how do you make it happen?
How do we make it happen?
What exactly is the idea to use the local? Could you explain more?
Yeah, I'll just explain in a nutshell. There's a huge market in America for organic milk and organic dairy products, such as rice, and they're charging $2, $3 extra per gallon, just because it's organic. And what the idea is take it one level higher. Let's say it's organic 100%, but let's give it a guarantee on the carton that says every single the milk that you're drinking here, we guarantee that the cows will not be slaughtered. And we're going to charge you $1 extra, which goes towards the insurance of the cows. And and maybe we can get these goshalas that are sitting there restarted, get devotees back into the system where they're making money, and maybe do some service for Christians like that.
Well, the question is this idea, is it realizable, is it feasible, can it be turned into a profitable business? Now, I must say, and that's not to discourage anyone, but in the venture capital business for the last 10 years, I've been reviewing business plan almost on a daily and weekly basis. All kinds of ideas, startups, ranging from internet startups to agricultural startups and so on. Most startups, they fail, 80%, 85, 90%. The reason is that a startup entrepreneur usually is inexperienced. He has no prior experience to managing and setting up a business. And oftentimes the ideas are kind of sometimes idealistic, somewhat naive, lacking experience. I must say, one of the most difficult things in business is to find a good business. And a business that can grow, that can be profitable, and that can be successfully managed, and in the end turn into something which is really profitable also for the investors that would participate in it. The plan that you're describing, of course, I don't know any of the details, etc., but it sounds like a very difficult plan. Because you're trying to do something which is half charitable, which is to get people to donate money to protect the cows, at the same time sell milk that's biological. Now, I'm sure there's a market for that. But the agricultural industry in general is a very, very competitive type of business. So, without going into too much detail, but if you want to do that, then you really have to research it, you have to study it, you have to look at it very hard, realistically, and most importantly, you have to find people that can manage that kind of business. Because the entrepreneur is where it begins and where it ends. You can have a brilliant business in a great market, but if the entrepreneur, the guy doing it, running it, and waking up in the morning and going to bed with it, totally focused on it, if that person is not there, it's not going to happen. And I've seen so many businesses start, initiatives taken, but if the entrepreneur is not there to see it through, to make it happen, it's not going to happen. So that's the most important thing. Secondly, if you have the right kind of people, then you have to study the market. Can it be done? Even though the ideal may be brilliant, but if the market is not there, it's just not going to happen either. So that's just quickly responding to what you're saying. These kind of things require very detailed research and analysis. And even then, if it's a startup, it's not going to be easy.
Thank you.
Hi, Rich. This is a question directed towards Kat in response to your comment about the balance of virtue, love, and pleasure. One of the difficulties that I find, and I think other devotees might also find, is that I would say particularly at philosophy, we stress so much of the nature of the transcendental world and the activities there, and there's such a heavy concentration on our spiritual nature and on sadhu sangha and devotional literature and immersing ourselves in that culture, that a lot of times to divorce oneself from that, from either the society or from the culture itself, it's very difficult. And even from a time perspective, as devotees, or as we advance, we're all encouraged to accept initiation and to increase our commitment. That as a full-time worker, working 40 hours and then chanting 2.5 rounds and then just trying to get enough sleep. And then the weekend is becoming more like a cycle, where I'm just trying to recreate it so I can do it again next week. Can you address something to the point of achieving that balance, and maybe what kind of strength needs to take place within a devotee in order to go a little bit outside the circles to get financially freedom?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. Let me first clarify for this audience that I'm an aspiring devotee of Krishna and not a devotee. I'm neither initiated nor advanced. I actually count it as a blessing that I've never had a spiritual experience in my life. I have no idea what y'all are talking about. What I do know is that this process works. What I do know is that the Bhagavad Gita is truth. What I do know is that this balance is a global balance. So what I can share with you is that in so much as of the things that I've noticed that sometimes happens to those who have had spiritual experiences, and I'm not knocking having spiritual experiences, but one of the things I've noticed is that once they've had it, it's almost like an addiction. And that addiction is such that they feel guilt when they can't realize that spiritual bliss. So when they're actually back in the material world, there's guilty feeling that they're not still in the spiritual world, and they focus entirely on attaining that spiritual world, or that spiritual bliss, or that little moment. And I was talking to my brother the other day, we were talking about how actually this was like the ultimate crack cocaine. I mean, it's the same effect, but what we were talking about is something permanent, as opposed to something temporary. So in my own life, in my own experience of life, if at every stage of my life, and I've made some medium spiritual advancement as I've progressed through my life, I find some time to chant a little bit. And this is where I talk about variety. I followed the 4 regs. And actually, I went backwards from following the 4 regs. I followed them very strictly. And then I found that emotionally, I was crippling myself, because all of my experience of the world was theoretical. So I actually backed off from that stricture, from that strict association with it, without ever removing my purpose. And my purpose is not to get out of this world. My purpose is to have this world at such a stage that I will naturally be lifted out of it. And I don't want to leave this place without any of you. I don't want to leave this place until all of you are gone. So I don't know that. Honestly. That's all to answer your question, I guess I'm probably less qualified than many to talk about it, but find the right balance for yourself, honestly. Find your balance, find what your limit is, and just really dedicate yourself to virtue and the sacrifice for this age. The sacrifice for this age, which time back to what Hare Krishna Prabhu talked about from Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya explains the sacrifice for this age. Instead of the Vedics, fire sacrifices, etc., it is simply chanting and sankirtan and teaching this knowledge, which we always say book distribution, but teaching this knowledge in any form. And actually food distribution. I mean, Food for Life is an astonishing project. And you see all these material attempts at feeding the planet. And one of the most basic is vegetarianism, but on top of that, we have to actually show them what kind of food we can deliver. And Food for Life is one of the projects I really want to see. And I do think that although business and charity never mix, and I never want to see them mix, business without virtue is fruitless. It's absolutely fruitless. And so business must dedicate a percentage of its endeavor purely to charity. And those people running that charity must be 100% dedicated to that charity. And the worst shame for this movement is that Sankirtan is synonymous with raising money. And that's disgusting, and it has to change.